go ahead and get started. Today we're here to talk about Walmart Audits 101. And joining myself is Annette Powell. She's our Senior Audits Manager. And if you have questions about audits, guys, this is the person to ask. Annette has so much knowledge. She's worked, correct me if I'm wrong, Annette, but you've worked on the retailer side, you've worked on the supplier side, and you've just always been visited by audits because you are a wealth of knowledge. We're glad that we have you here at SupplyPike to help our customers with managing their audits.
Nope, that's correct. I've been doing this for about 27 years now.
Yeah, so I'll just say we're going to talk about questions on our next couple slides, but if you have questions, get them in early and often because Annette is the one person I would choose to ask questions about audits. She's just so helpful. So we've got a lot to get through today. We're going to talk a little bit about what post audits are. So this is a great course or webinar if you have never really dealt with post audits, if your hair is on fire and you're kind of freaking out about some of the post audits that you're seeing. Then we're going to talk about some of the context that comes with those audits. So who are the auditors? Breaking down those claims, there's a lot of information that comes in them and understanding how you can leverage that to your advantage when you're decoding those documents. And then there are different types of post audits, and we're going to talk about what those are and some of the prevention for those. So of course, if you have a post audit on your desk, you want to know how to dispute them. We're going to talk about that. But we also want to cover, some of the offense that you can have before a post audit ever hits your desk or it's deducted from your invoice. And then we will have time at the end for questions, and Annette will talk a little bit about what she does at SupplyPike to help our customers with their post audits. So I will say with our FAQs, the one on the bottom here is questions. I expect that there will be a lot of questions today. So put those in the Q&A tab. I'll be viewing those and I'll kind of be behind the scenes either answering them or saving them for the end. I may pop a couple in the middle as Annette's speaking if it's pertinent to the slide we're on, but otherwise just use the Q&A. I will look at the chat a little bit, but if there's a conversation that starts happening or you're sharing some of your insights with what you've done on post audits, usually those questions can get lost. So put them in the Q&A tab and I'll see those first. One more thing I wanted to mention is that will you get a copy of today's slide deck? Yes, you can take notes if you want, but we always send our attendees a copy of the webinar slide deck in a PDF format, and then we'll send you a recording. And if you can't find that in your inbox, we'll send it to you, or you can find it on supplierwiki.com. Just search the title name and that should pop up. And then lastly, we like to keep our content 90% educational, but we do want to tell you who we are and what we do. So we're a part of SupplyPike, and we create cloud-based tools that help CPGs reduce revenue loss. We do that at a couple different retailers, and it's constantly expanding, as well as a couple different avenues of those revenue loss. The one that we're focusing on today is obviously post audits or audits, but we also have solutions for your deduction fines, your compliance fines, your SWEP fines. So we'd love to see you. If you have those issues, we'd love to help recover dollars for you. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Annette to go through today's content.
Well, good morning, guys. We're just going to jump right into this. Post audits are audits that are backdated. It can be backdated up to 2 years, sometimes 2.5 years from the time that the event actually happened. They will be coming off invoice and are not disputed in any system. It's disputed straight with the auditing firm. Different types of deductions that you may see is accounts payable deductions, which those are coming strictly off an invoice. You can dispute those in ADPD. Those are very common and we help resolve those. We have accounts receivable deductions, which typically are fines that are to the supplier that happen in high radius, which therefore are disputed also in high radius. Disputing audits is fairly difficult. Why we can't pull exact hard numbers from all of our suppliers on audits that are taken in Retail Link. We've done some extensive research that shows that suppliers get an average of 8 audits per year. up to with an average cost of about $33,000 and can go up into 7 digits. Nothing's off the table with post audits. They can range from a PO or a series of POs that fall into, different scenarios, that have never been deducted previously. They come back 2 years later and they recoup those fees in a post audit. AP claims can be filed, disputed, and approved, but then again, filed in a post audit if the auditor deems that those deductions should have been taken. How do you know if you have a post audit? The auditors are going to send you a email to the supplier contact. And in that email, you're going to receive a package of information. You're typically going to have a PDF file and an Excel file that will go through the details that the auditor has at hand at that point. The audit package will outline what type of claim it's for and the amount. It'll usually list a list of POs on the claim or batch them to, anything that's similar on there and go through them. How you distinguish a post audit from a regular deduction. Post audits are deducted on the check using the store 9,000. Post audits are also always 9 digits long on your claim, on your check remit. And then the first digit of the claim corresponds with the auditing firm. The second and the third digit corresponds with the year that the audit is for. And the last 6 digits is the actual claim number that goes with that audit. The timeline for post audits, Walmart has some intervals where suppliers can expect to receive post audits. Post audits can be backdated up to 2 calendar years from when the claim is posted. This means that a posted in January of 2023 could be brought back in a post audit up to January of 2025. A claim posted in March of 21, they would have until December of 23 to file a claim against that. So it's basically calendar years, not actual physical 24 months. These factors are difficult to respond to and effective to dispute post-audit claims. Auditors 101. So who is the auditor? Walmart has a tight relationship with Apex, who performs right now as represents their internal auditing firm. That will rotate every so many years. They also have several external auditing firms. Those external auditing firms are outsourced auditing firms and can be assigned to different audit types. Really, there's not a rhyme or reason as to which auditing firm handles exactly what type of audits. It can rotate and vary just a little bit. Apex, Conley, PRGX, and Auditex are some of the auditing firms that have represented Walmart. These auditing firms are commission-based, so they get a percentage of everything that they can extract from their Walmart suppliers. So we're going to break down the claims for you. When you get your claim package, you're going to see that there's a claim code and type, an explanation, any supporting information or materials that the auditor has at that point, and contact information for the auditor will be included in that packet. This is a sample of what a post-audit will look like. Basically, the intro page of the audit will go through a lot of detail here. At the top of the claim will be the supplier information. It'll have the date, what the supplier name is, the claim number, and the supplier number. And then this claim code type will just determine what type of audit this is for. This one is for a 94, so that's excessive defectives. the area of responsibility. An internal auditing group will notate what claim type falls under their source of expertise. Different auditors handle those a little bit differently. The claim explanation will give you a explanation of what the claim is for and what they're recovering for. And then in the amount column, it'll go over the amount of the audit that they say should have been taken but not taken. And that's where that will be at. And then at the bottom, it'll have the auditor's information and date that the audit was reviewed by the auditor and what audit team actually did the research. So the second page of the audit will have a just a summary of basically what was on page 1, but it'll include a little bit more information here. It will have in the notes the actual exact time frame that the audit is for. So this one is for 2021 Q4 year to date, which Q4 is usually a summary of the whole year to kind of true up the audits for the entire year. And then back at the bottom of the claim, you will also have more audit information about the auditor with an email address for that auditing firm. Here is a breakout of when you get your file, you're going to have a detailed spreadsheet. These are kind of some of the fields on some of the audits that we have seen that will give you, the information that the auditor pulled for you and give you the detail that you need to be able to start your research. Ellie, I see you pop back in. Do you have a question?
Yeah, we got a question from Melissa. She just asked, so since we're going through this document, she was asking who would actually receive that audit notice.
Typically, I'm not 100% sure the rhyme or reason to how they do it, but they go into Retail Link and typically they find somebody in your accounting department or your sales department. Suppliers that I've worked for in the past, the sales team got the audits as well as the accounts payable person that it shows in Retail Link of who's doing the research. So that's typically who gets it. Once an audit's received, if the wrong person is getting the information, you can always email that auditing firm and say, hey, can you start forwarding audits to, and give them the correct email addresses to forward them to.
Awesome. Thank you, Annette. And then just a follow-up question for my curiosity. Is there any way to change that maybe in the supplier agreement or just have that, we know time is of the essence with these post audits. So is there something they can do ahead of time just to make sure it goes to the right person?
Not in the supplier agreement, there is not. There might be a way to go just email the auditing firms specifically and say, hey, these are the people that need to be, receiving any audits that we may potentially get in the future. That would be my guess.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Annette.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about the types of post. It is always easier for merchants and suppliers to handle agreements as close to the transaction time as possible before the issue is being reviewed by post-payment audit. By the time that the PPA is reviewing the situation, it's very possible that the buyer or the supplier contact has changed. So therefore, creating a little bit more of an issue to get the correct information and the emails that might be in correspondence with that. So properly addressing agreements from the beginning is beneficial on their part. Different types of post audits that we see are for pricing, allowances. Excessive defective seems to be a really popular one right now. We see on those excessive defectives, we see freight and handling charges on these returns, trucks ordered not used. Failure to combine loads properly, sorry, and retail merchandise recovery. Pricing post audits are typically occur when there is a discrepancy between Walmart and what they're expected to pay and what the supplier actually invoiced, and what they paid the supplier. The item price is protected, but not all units are captured when it was calculated. So let's say you're doing a rollback or something and you charge them full price on the invoice, and they're going to come back and recover the difference. So preventing pricing post audits. For the suppliers, what they need to do is make sure that your email verbiage is very clear. Kind of like just adding, hey, this is an offer on our pricing. This is not a confirmed pricing until you agree to via email. Just little simple words like that. Changing your verbiage in your emails can eliminate some of the audits that could happen. Just to make sure that, you're all on the same page. Allowances on post audits. These allowances are typically off invoice and not given at time of invoice. These could be defective allowances, cash discounts, quantity allowances. And a lot of times those allowances occur. Maybe you transmitted them on your invoice, but you transmitted them in the wrong segment. That could potentially result in a post audit to recover those funds as well. Preventing allowance post audits, checking the allowances in the vendor agreement to make sure that they are applied to each PO. These claims also occur when the allowances is not proper in the proper segment in the EDI raw data where Sam's or Walmart states that it should be. I think that's the biggest offender of getting audits for allowances that you already given is it's just not put in the right segment. To prevent these, supplier will need to make sure that they're pulling all the segments on the EDI raw data before creating your invoice. That will eliminate a lot. Freight and handling charges on returns. Auditors will calculate the cost of delivering the cargo on the damaged product. This is primarily for collect suppliers, and they will create an audit to recover the freight charges for the for that item for the incoming freight. Walmart also calculates a 10% handling charge on all damaged product. This is to recover the cost of handling the product that Walmart could not sell. And like I said, this is for mainly collect suppliers. Preventing post audits on freight and handling charges. It's hard to prevent them, but just because we don't always have control over the damaged product of what happens, but you can ensure that your proper packaging, your pallets are secured properly, and to ensure that the product arrives safely. Trucks ordered not used occurs anytime that the supplier does not use a truck, and the Walmart or the supplier must reroute the driver. Suppliers may see this claim when they cancel a collect order. Collect suppliers, you might see this claim when you cancel an order. So to prevent this, just make sure you're ordering your trucks correctly, make sure your items are set up correctly and you don't overbuild your loads. And make sure that everything's built correctly. Sorry, what's my train of thought there? Failure to combine loads properly. We see audits on that all the time where the purchase order is removed from a truck, but the logistic company that's dispatched has to dispatch an extra truck to cover that PO because it didn't fit. Those could be a result of large shortages. Maybe the items aren't set up properly, and you would have to reconfigure the loads based off of that. Preventing the failure to combine loads properly is just double check that you're utilizing the entire truck. If you're gonna be short, the quicker you notify them. If you know about the shortage ahead of time and let them know, hey, you're gonna have, a little bit more room on the truck. Then they can adjust that ahead of time, and that would eliminate a lot of that. The supplier may have to go back to Walmart and ask them to rebuild the truck. So Walmart may build your loads, but it's your responsibility to make sure that you're still utilizing that truck properly. Just a little post-audit checklist. Always document everything with a call, or every time you have a call or a meeting with them, follow up with an email, and then share it in a saved folder so that everybody has access to it. Know your supplier agreement, know the terms and conditions, and know it like the back of your hand. So check your accounting scorecard and investigate any EDI invoice accuracy issues. That's a big one, especially on missing allowances, or maybe even transmitting those in the wrong segments. So review the supplier quality excellence program, the SQEP program, for proper packaging requirements. Make sure that that's correct. Ensure that all your items are set up correctly. And not only does that mean make sure your item numbers are set up correctly, that means make sure your cube and your weight are set up. Make sure that you're ordering in the right. If you weigh out, make sure you're ordering by weight. If you're cubed out, make sure you're ordering by cube. That'll eliminate a lot. How to dispute post audits. This is always the fun one. So respond before you research. Let them know that you're reviewing the package. If you need extra time, you can ask for an extension of time to reserve to research the post audit. And it'll show that you've at least communicated with them and you're working with them to resolve the issue. Review your post audit package and respond to the auditor with all the information in your package. Review the claim documentation, review your supplier agreement. Depending on the claim type, you may need to go into Retail Inc. and pull some information to add to your supporting documentation on this. What is a supplier agreement? It's the legal document that is between you and Walmart. It applies to any supplier that sells product to Walmart for resale and any agents used by suppliers. Where can I find my supplier agreement? It is in Retail Inc. You can access your OSAs by clicking your profile in the right upper corner of your screen, and then click sign an agreement under whichever business unit you want to see. Finally, you can view and edit through your browser or download it into a PDF form. Post-audit workflow. Understand the type of claims that you're facing and what options are based on the bucket list that they fall into. It's the supplier's responsibility to research these post audits in a timely manner and to dispute if needed. Correspondence based. There's like so many different reasons that they would do a post audit, and there's some miscellaneous as well. Supplier based agreement. It doesn't violate your vendor agreement. If the audit is between $500 and $100,000, then these will be auto deducted from your check. The auditor will send you an email and say, hey, here's your audit. You can research it. They'll say they give you 5 days, but they set it up for auto payment anyway. If it's over $100,000, the auditor will send you an email with the contact information. Say that you have 15 days to respond until the auditor escalates it for deduction. Not responding will mean that the auditor will indeed send that audit for deduction, or sometimes they actually send it to the buyer for review for deduction for approval. a supplier agreement post audit. Walmart, if it's in the supplier agreement, they're gonna auto deduct those claims. Auditor will again send you an email packet to the contacts. Supplier doesn't have a history of claims. Auditor emails the supplier, contact the claim package, has 15 days to respond. And then by not responding, the auditor will escalate that for deduction. So a few disputing tips for post audits is most post audits are partially invalid. So you want to dig into all the claims listed and see if you're able to win anything back, which we hope you can. So if they're valid claims, you can write them off, review the documentation as proof, communicate the learning with the other teams, and then apply learnings to avoid future audits. If they're invalid, ensure repayment, review and save proof of documentation, and communicate learnings with other teams. If they're invalid, you can sometimes determine a reason that they were invalid and get a correction of errors and fix those on your side. Post-audit dispute process timeline. Supplier will receive a packet via email or mail. Typically it's email now. Contact auditor directly via information in the package. Supplier and auditor work together to create a solution. A post-audit claim is determined valid or invalid. So the first two happens within 15 days. Typically, the next step, it'll take up to 30 days, and post-audit timeline determined by the supplier. Communication with the auditor will determine how long it'll take you to determine if it's invalid and to receive payback. Some disputing tips. Make sure your OSA has the correct address and contact information. Respond to the auditor as promptly as possible. Just like dispute process, provide as much documentation as needed and then some. Escalate if you did not receive a response from your auditor by calling the vendor call center at the number listed here. You can request a copy if you need it through the microfilm department. And suppliers can loop in their buyers to influence the auditor, especially if it's a pricing related audit and you and your buyer didn't agree to that. You may have to loop into the buyer and say, hey, you never agreed to this. The auditor's trying to do this, and the buyer will help you eliminate that from being deducted or help you get it repaid. And now we're ready for question and answers.
All right. Yeah, I've got a couple questions here queued up, but if you have more questions, if you're in attendance, please put those in the Q&A or the chat. I'll go ahead and tee those up since we have a little bit of extra time. First question I have for you, Annette, is about the cadence of post audits. So on one of the first slides, you talked about the cadence being around like 8 times a year. Last time I talked to you, I think we said that that was a little bit less. I think we said 3 times a year. So could you maybe talk about why we've seen that difference in the last year?
We haven't really in the past been able to pull like reports to show hard numbers, and based off of the logic of the 9-digit claim numbers that auditors create. At SupplyPike, we've been able to go in and look at all the audits across the board of, all the suppliers. And when we averaged it out across our 500 suppliers, we realized that it was more than that. They weren't just getting 3 a year. They were getting up to 8 to 10 a year. So,
Wow.
and that fluctuates depending on how much time, how many times you change your pricing through the year, if you do it efficiently. It depends on, are you transmitting your allowances in the correct segments. Any little error that you make could potentially create another audit.
Yeah, that makes sense. And kind of to piggyback off of what you said, depending on how you're doing it or what type of company you are, maybe could you speak to the companies or like category types that you see have the most post audits or just general pitfalls?
Yeah, right now, our biggest post audits that we're seeing are for excessive defective merchandise. Those are huge right now. We have seen, based off of the ones that I have researched here at SupplyPike, we have seen about a 50% payback on those.
Wow.
So, it's just, and a lot of the times it's, just a matter of, are you packaging your product properly? Are you wrapping your pallets secure enough to make sure that there's no shifting and shipping, and making sure that the loads are when you load your trucks, that they're loaded properly, and just little things like that. If it, that could affect that at all.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that's helpful to know. I'm just kind of thinking too, let's say I'm brand new to post audits and it's getting put on my desk, or I've just never worked with them. What's like the one or two tips that you would suggest? I know we went through some of them, but I want to hear from your expertise.
Um, It all depends on the audit type that you have. Basically, you just got to start from scratch. You look at the time frame of the audit, and you go back and you say, okay, this audit's for pricing. Let's see what the communication happened, the full communication, because typically there's only a snippet of your email in with your audit package, and so you want to make sure that through the rest of that email communication that is on that audit, that there wasn't something that distinguish, hey, this is only an offer. This wasn't, it's not accepted until you reply. If you don't have that reply email saying that pricing was accepted, then, there's your information that you need to help dispute the audit. There's a lot of different avenues that you can, look at, but that is the first step, like on a pricing audit, where you got to go. And typically that's the salesperson within the company that handles that communication. So you may need to, get a meeting set with him and go over that.
That makes sense.
Mhm.
You're giving me all sorts of questions. I'm coming up with I'm getting a couple more that I think would be interesting. You talked about emails, and we know that emails are really helpful, especially like you mentioned price discrepancies. What other documentation would be helpful for proving that a post audit is invalid?
Um, there's reports that can be pulled out of Retail Link. Sometimes, like on some of the audits, there's information that can be pulled out of Retail Link, but then you have to go back to your system and look. One of the things with excessive defectives that we found is some suppliers, if they're not given the allowances in the proper segment, then they may have given it, but the auditor, when they're pulling the information, they're not able to see all of the allowances that was truly given on those audits. So they have, by, when I research them, I'm able to say, oh, but wait, we give these allowances, they just weren't the right segment. So we can, prove that was done. And that could be done on, two different types of audits, excessive defectives, and if they come back and say, oh, you didn't give us that allowance off, and so now you're gonna take it again. So
So that is so interesting, and similar to kind of what you're saying about some of the reports you can pull in DSS. Annette, I was talking to you about our webinar that we had on Tuesday, which was all about Retail Links DSS going away and Luminate. Are you pulling those reports mostly in DSS when you're looking at some of the post audit things?
there are some reports that I have been pulling in DSS, but we have used the new systems that have been put at hand to be able to pull out of other avenues. So we don't just have to rely on DSS. I've been kind of doing a test of that over the course of the last couple of months with the audits that I have researched. So there's definitely other avenues that we'll be able to utilize. It is a learning process with everything. So we're learning and growing together on this. But we've been able to successfully dispute some audits using the new information.
That's kind of a sigh of relief, especially because I know a lot of suppliers are anxious about losing the information.
Right.
Post audits, with the cadence that they're coming at suppliers and just the amount, it's good to know that, DSS going away isn't going to, wipe out a huge chunk of post audit
No.
information.
No, I think we're going to be good on that avenue. I think it's just learning the new tools and learning where to find the new information. But like I said, we've been digging into that, and we've been able to successfully dispute some audits with that information. So
that is really good to hear. Another question that I got is about just SupplyPike. So I know we can get into this a little bit here now. Melissa asked, will SupplyPike be able to help us if needed with post audits?
yes, we can. Just reach out to us, and we'll be glad to talk to you about our program and dig into your audits with you and help you get them disputed and hopefully get recovered.
Yes, agreed. These are our emails. You can reach out to us. Of course, we want to keep it educational, but Annette is a part of the powerhouse behind what the solution we're providing at SupplyPike. So you can email us here and we can get in contact with you. It looks like one more question. I'm gonna kind of pare it down. This is from Chris. And then Annette, I'll just have you, I'll send this question over you to follow up because there's a good amount of information.
Okay.
But maybe could you talk a little bit about ordered cube versus weight versus routed cube? I think that's falling into like a freight charge or a handling charge. Could you maybe just talk about an example that you've seen and how you've been able to help win some of that back?
So there's kind of a two-step process to this. So when I get an audit for weight in cube, if it's cubed out and it's not filling the truck right, I just go back and make sure your items are set up properly. I know a lot of times the size of the package is maybe keyed in backwards, like the height is keyed in as the width and the width is the height. So that when building your pallets, and that does make a big difference. So we basically would have you go back through and work with you to make sure that your item setups are properly and work through that. If they're set up properly, we can send the information back over and say, hey, we went through our process. We know all of our information is correct. This audit's not valid. It was built exactly like it should have been. And we just provide that information to the supplier.
That's really interesting, Annette, especially because this particular question came with a couple extra points of context. But Chris is mentioning how the auditor is not going to waive the entire claim, even though he agrees that parts of it are wrong. So I know you've helped suppliers have these conversations with auditors or merchant teams. How do you, if the claim is a certain amount and the auditor agrees, but they won't waive it, even if like 40% is wrong? How do you mitigate that situation?
It's unfortunate. So if the auditor isn't budging, the next person to bring in is your buyer. And unfortunately, that's where it's gonna take the buyer to get involved to say, hey, the supplier is doing what they're supposed to do. This is not valid. And the buyers don't want to hear that. But the way that audits are being handled right now, it's pushed the pressure over to the buyers a lot more to get involved in issues like this. When I started my career, you didn't involve a buyer unless you just absolutely had to. And now it seems like the buyers are getting more and more involved with making these decisions. So
that's really interesting, especially because we just know that buyers right now are pretty strapped. I mean, they've always been pretty strapped, but I feel like more and more every day they have other things that are competing priorities, things that they have to get done, right? So that's really interesting that buyers are getting pulled in more and more. I guess I'll ask one more question on this. I did want to point out, Annette, you mentioned, making sure your items are set up correctly. And I'm always going to plug helpful resources. We are doing a 3-part webinar series. I just sent the sign up link in the chat. We're doing this 3-part webinar series with One World Sync. So if you've ever set up an item, you've probably heard of One World Sync. And their chief product officer is actually going to be on 3 webinars talking through how to optimize, manage, and set up your products. So it's going to be really great content. I know it's different than your auditing, but it all kind of, the circle of life the supplier life, it all kind of is interconnected. And if you set up an item wrong, it may come to haunt you in a deduction or a post audit. So
That it will.
awesome. And then the last question I wanted to ask, again, kind of pointing back to Chris's question, is how much do you see recovered on an audit? Usually from our conversations, Annette, you've said that like 100% isn't always guaranteed, but what's the percentage that you're seeing won back on these audits?
On the audits that we have researched here and recovered, we are at about a 50%, sometimes a little bit more, sometimes a little bit less across the board. So it seems to be a lot higher than suppliers. When we've done did some of our research, we found that they were actually on their own, were in the single digit recovery rates on those, where when we've been doing it, we've been looking that we're, in the 50 percentiles.
See, that's awesome. But at the same time, that's so frustrating because I know suppliers are swamped with other things, and then they have this post audit, they're working on it. And then, for all that work to be in the single digits of recovery is really frustrating. So,
yeah.
Annette, thank you for walking us through all of this content. This has been super helpful. I've really learned some things. Every time I get on a webinar or have a conversation with you, I learn something about post audits. I did want to just give you a chance to talk about the audit service. We alluded to it a little bit earlier, but tell us a little bit about what you do and how you help suppliers with their post audits.
Mm-hmm. So what I do is I take your audit and I just kind of reverse research it for you. I do all the research for you. If you're a customer at SupplyPikes, we have all your information that we can pull the reporting that we need. We can get all the data and I'll do everything for you and determine if your audit is valid or invalid. And then I'll set up a meeting with you and I'll kind of go over my research and look at it and let you know what we found and what part of it we deem invalid, what part of it we deem valid. If we deem part of it as valid, then what I do, then the second step to this is I also help you get better. I help you figure out what mistakes cause these audits. What can you do to fix these mistakes to help you in the future to not get these type of audits going forward? It may be as simple as fixing your item setups or making sure your allowances are, transmitted in the proper segments on your invoices. So there's a lot of avenues to that. So once we get to the point where, we're ready to dispute the audit, then we can determine, do you want to dispute it or you want me to help you dispute it with the auditors? And we can handle that and get them disputed for you. And then when they get repaid, then we just take a very small percentage of that as our research fee. It's 0% to let me research it for you. So we can definitely get it researched for you and determine, where to go from there. So
awesome. Well, it sounds like if you're a customer, you can just reach out to your customer success manager or whatever contact makes sense for SupplyPike. You can go back to our emails if you want to reach out to us directly. We'll get you connected in the right places. And then Annette, if they're not a current customer or they're not working with SupplyPike currently, how can they reach out to you or get connected for help with post audits?
They can send me an email. And then we'll set you up with the right customer service manager and reach out to you and go over the options that we have to be able to help you get them resolved.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for joining. Thank you, Annette, for walking us through all of that content. And we hope to see you guys at another webinar.